Welcome to this week's episode of What's at Stake. We're your hosts, Bryan DeAngelis, partner and head of the Washington office here at Penta.
And I'm Ylan, managing director at Penta.
And today we're diving into what's shaping up to be another transformative year for the crypto industry. The market has seen rapid innovation, regulatory shifts, and continued volatility. To help us unpack all that we can expect in 2025, we're excited to welcome in Ron Hammond, Senior Director of Government Relations and Institutional Engagement at the Blockchain Association. Ron has played a major role in shaping crypto policy while he was on the Hill, serving as financial services policy lead for Congressman Warren Davidson. He worked on several pieces of legislation, including the Token Taxonomy Act and the Derivatives Fairness Act. Now he represents the Blockchain Association on Capitol Hill, and he's here today to help us break it all down. Thanks for coming, Ron.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate
it. Let's jump right into the discussion. So a lot of momentum heading into this year for the crypto industry. And as advertised, it's shaping up to be a pretty monumental year for crypto. Bitcoin, I think maybe down a little bit the last couple of days, but has seen a huge surge over the last few months. Adoption among institutions and corporations continues to increase. But you know, as history has shown, crypto is still kind of a new industry and there are swings that can happen. So what are we kind of looking at? Are we truly in a fundamentally different time for crypto this year?
First off, thanks for having me. And I will say definitely yes. When it comes to at least Capitol Hill's view of crypto, for the longest time, we were, quote, down bad, you could say. Many folks didn't care about crypto.
I like the Taylor Swift reference.
Yeah. I had to throw it in there for a little pop culture. But for a long time, people didn't care. And if they did, it was the internet funny money or it was utilizing, terrorist activities. And so that was up until about 2021. Right. Well, I mentioned the bio here because, back in 2017, a lot of my friends and a lot of folks on Capitol Hill just really didn't care about this issue. They actually gave me a little nickname, Captain Crypto, because I worked with Congressman Crypto or Davidson, and we would always ask about crypto. Whether it be Jay Powell or Janet Yellen, it's always about crypto. But no one really cared. And then 2021 came around, and then all of a sudden, everyone's talking about crypto. It would be NFTs or this new guy, SBF, this FTX exchange, Coinbase. We saw it in DC, at least some of the lobbyists starting to get hired. So that was when we kind of started, at least in DC, seeing a really big shift. And that culminated to what happened in the election in November. We saw a huge win for crypto across the PAC side. We've seen massive momentum in terms of both Republicans and Democrat candidates getting elected, and pretty resoundingly in most cases. And they've actually, in some cases, flipped seats, which is crazy to see. So we went from pretty much being one of the industries that no one cares about or even, viewed as very negative by many members of Congress to we carry a lot of weight now. A lot of folks have been asking us, what's going on? And it's been very awesome to see it from at least me personally, to see this shift. But now the hard work comes. And everything we've been talking about for years is culminating to right now. And that's no easy task to get this across the finish line. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Tell me more when you saw the shift, because we probably got involved in crypto with some of our clients around that time in 2021. And then there was obviously FTX, which was I'll call it a dark moment for the industry. But we saw probably sometime in end of 2024, a lot of the education that companies and others and the Blockchain Association had invested in this city started to pay off a little bit.
You're 100% right. It did pay off. And these efforts took years to get to this point. Back when I was a Hill staffer in 2017, I was reaching out to pretty much every single office on financial services, both Republican and Democrat, trying to find a co-sponsor for this bill, because the idea was, hey, the first market structure bill out there, we want to be bipartisan. We were able to get Darren Soto from Florida, but it took a lot of meetings, and frankly, most folks didn't care. The shift definitely happened 2021, 2022. DC, in my experience, has been like 6 months behind the bull market cycle. So in 2017,
I think that's very generous.
That's very generous. Hey,
sometimes it feels like 6 years. Yeah.
Hey, that's fast for DC. It's slow for crypto. So we kind of struck the middle. But 2021 was a big shift. 2017 is actually the kind of like started me working on crypto policy as a staffer. And we're kind of seeing a lot of that right now, where there was a big bull run post-election. There's a lot of hype, and obviously there's a lot of market actions recently that, some are better, some for worse. But the upside is at least the interest is massive. And we've seen crypto listed in the first 100 priorities of the House, which I never thought I would see to that point. We've always been so bottom of the list in terms of what folks care about, even last Congress. But this Congress, it's a number one listed priority. So that's huge. And then we have the administration behind it. We have senators who are very much knowledgeable, mostly on this issue. The House is a lot farther ahead. But I think we got a lot of work to do, but we still got some good progress. But it's a lot of the education that took years to get there, especially when you're so headline driven in this industry and DC. That's kind of the problem is every time we're making progress, there's a new part of crypto that comes out, whether it be, again, NFTs, meme coins,
Sure.
A hack or scandal. Like these are things you have to explain in a 10-minute period to a 75-year-old senator. It takes a couple of those meetings to actually have it cement to get to that point, but long way to go still.
Ron, I think that's a really good segue actually to, the policy landscape, I think, for crypto going forward. Now that DC actually cares about crypto, what are the priorities for the industry? What do you want to achieve now that you're, at the top of the agenda?
Well, first, and I'd probably say this list was made back in fall of last year, was, hey, we got to stop the SEC. The enforcement division is going crazy on all these projects. I mean, if you're a top 10 crypto project in the United States, odds are you probably have some SEC action against you in some way, shape, or form, or with one of your major partners. And that's just untenable. And we've seen the market react very drastically when that threat of enforcement withered away with the new administration. But now it's going to get to the difficult part of trying to bring the industry together, who was always a collective fighting the bad guy in their mind, which was the SEC primarily, and coming together to get a market structure bill together. And a market structure bill, that's something, again, I personally worked on back in 2017, 2016. That's it's been almost 8 years at this point, and we still haven't gotten a coalition around what final definitions need to look like. There are plenty of views within the industry itself, and the industry does evolve so rapidly that sometimes when you write legislation, it's outdated in a year because the market has come up with this new idea or product that maybe doesn't fit in the exact mold. So it's always been tough. But right now we are trying to get those bright line tests, especially with the market structure bill, and understand that where the CFTC jurisdiction end, as well as the SEC's jurisdiction end, and figuring out exactly when folks need to go to the proper regulator, and some other more just general, compliance things as well, like anti-money laundering rules are important to codify. We're looking at stablecoin regulation as well. That seems to be the hottest topic right now is stablecoins. And then, some other small things like protections for NFTs, and figuring out exactly where other consumer protection elements need to come into play. But as I mentioned, I'm talking more at a high level because there is a disagreement among a lot of the folks in the industry. Some warranted, some maybe not as warranted, different views on where those lines should be. And that's what we do at the Blockchain Association. We try to find that common denominator, which can be very difficult sometimes. But as DC's kind of realizing now is that the crypto industry is not a monolith. So, just what one exchange or what one DeFi company CEO or exec says could be very different from what another executive says or another policy person. So that's the next education thing is understanding for Capitol Hill where the major players are and where, their pain points and maybe why they disagree with certain language.
So not to put you in the hot seat, but I wanted to ask a question like that because it is such a diverse industry, from asset managers to stablecoin issuers to you get into DeFi, and they've had this common enemy, as you've said. They've been pretty united, but as you get pen to paper, how do you, especially sitting at the trade association that represents all of them, continue that momentum from last year where there was a lot of great education and engagement with policymakers, a lot of support from the industry for people on both sides of the aisle, a lot of grassroots support. But, inevitably, and you could name any industry in the world, there's going to be disagreements between that industry when pens start going down on paper. So how are you guys managing all of that?
We're trying. I'll put it that way nicely. This is the weird thing about the crypto space in particular is it lives on Twitter, or X, I guess it's called now. And that is for better or for worse, because early on, Capitol Hill really wasn't using Twitter too often. And then the folks who did, it was mostly in political Twitter. Everyone's kind of got their circles and their silos within their social media apps. But largely I found myself on the crypto side when I was using the app, and it's a great way to get bill analysis or hear from thought leaders. Whereas obviously in the political side, folks are just getting what's happening on Capitol Hill for that week. But now, and I'd say this happened about 2 years ago, there's been a merge now where a lot of folks, members of Congress and staff who are working on crypto legislation or maybe trying to work against the industry are seeing very much what the executives are putting out there on Twitter. And again, some folks have really good bill analysis or have views on a rule. So that's always been helpful. But now, it's usually been against what's happening at the current administration. Now, obviously, we got to bring folks together, and that's been very, very difficult. And Twitter is very transparent, so some people like to throw some bombs on there on Twitter, and it does make my life a little hectic. But again, sometimes it's good to raise these points because it is kind of like that digital town square where people can weigh in, and you don't have to fly into DC. And there's many circumstances where I've had a tweet sent to me from a member of Congress or a staffer or a regulator and saying like, what is this? What's happening? Please break it down. And that's what we're here for, the Blockchain Association. It's kind of, hey, like, here's the no BS answer of what we're seeing from our side. And then it does the same thing for the industry saying, hey, what's happening on Capitol Hill? Like all this craziness on Twitter we're seeing. It's like, no, it's not happening. Like, let me tell you like what's actually happening behind the scenes. So I think transparency is important. Twitter is a great thing for getting a lot of folks to communicate, but sometimes it does derail the legislative process.
Sure.
And it has happened several times where we've seen, a certain tweet critical of something has really derailed legislation. And just for a fun fact, I mean, I've mentioned the Token Taxonomy Act, and this is kind of my first wake up to Twitter. Was really excited to put years of work into that bill with Congressman Davidson, and we drop it, and on Twitter I'm just getting lambasted, and I'm like, these are the people I'm helping, and they are just going after this bill, for minute details. And mind you, I'm not a lawyer, but I worked with a lot of lawyers on this bill. And that was my first wake up call. I was like, oh, this is not a monolith of an industry.
Right.
They always have different views. And it sometimes, hurts to see a tweet critical of the bill of the industry you're trying to help. But at the same time, that's how good policy is made, is, hey, look, let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't work. But also understanding like this is happening. Like we're going to get legislation. This libertarian mindset of like, no rules whatsoever. That's not happening. That evaporated long ago.
So it seems like it works both ways, right? Like you have to explain to your members how Washington works, as well as explain to Washington how the industry works. So I guess I'm curious what policymakers are most interested in when it comes to crypto. How have their questions to you changed, and how has their, focus on the industry changed over the years?
So, I break it down. It's not Republican versus Democrat, although there are some similarities and lines of questions that we get in private and public conversations, depending on the party. But it's been very generational. I mean, we noticed that years ago where the younger folks were able to at least sort of grasp it, what crypto was, even if they didn't know what crypto necessarily was when they got into Congress. They have an idea of like kind of the tech sector and a lot of the evolutions and fixing inefficiencies in the system. So whether it be, young progressives like Richie Torres or, Warren Davidson's not as young anymore, but he was young when he started working on this. But Brandon Gill is another example of the youngest freshman in Congress right now. He's very pro crypto. So we're not seeing that kind of excitement usually around the upper echelons and the older folks in Congress. And those are the ones who tend to hold power. But at the same time, a lot of those questions have been really headline driven, at least for those older members of Congress, usually involving hacks or AML concerns or North Korea. And again, all very warranted for the most part. But in the early days, there was a lot more talking about just blanket everything for crypto as money laundering. And that took a long time to, really wear down that narrative and show them the facts and introduce them to people in the industry who are actually very much trying to improve life for everyone. But at the same time, I would say the most recent ones have been stablecoin regulation. That's what everyone wants to talk about. Just what's going on with stablecoins. What is this company Tether? What is this company Ripple? They're figuring out who the major players are. And then also understanding what happened with something like Terra. And breaking down Terra, a decentralized stablecoin, to a 75-year-old senator in 10 minutes can be very, very difficult. So it's been a lot of that and trying to use analogies and stuff to at least help them understand to an extent what they're voting on or what they're potentially having a hearing on. So, but it takes a lot of work. And you have to do that for the staff as well as a member of Congress. And it takes years, but the good thing is that we have a lot more reinforcements in DC. For years, it was just a couple of folks on the lobbying side. And remember 2021, the infrastructure bill, we had 6 lobbyists in all of crypto. I think now it's probably 50, 60. So we're still pretty small compared to
that
the
was
banks.
sort of the moment where things really
that
turned
was
DC.
the moment.
A
lot has changed since then. So, but I never thought we'd be in the situation we are now. So, which is exciting.
Yeah. Going back to I want to connect that last thought back to the question on X and Twitter. I mean, part of this is educating that very excited community, and they hold a lot of power with their grassroots ability. But the three of us know, the first draft of a piece of legislation is never the final draft. And if they get something done in 8 months, that's a pretty good clip for Washington, D.C. How do you take kind of all that energy on X or, to the best you can and redirect that in a way to support the effort rather than maybe react to every kind of twist and turn?
The funny thing is that it kind of does take a life on its own. And, sometimes we can help that narrative and sometimes it's just completely out of our control. I remember in the early days, a senator or member of Congress would tweet like, I funded a hospital in my district for, X amount of millions of dollars, like awesome work on my end, 3 likes on Twitter.
Right.
Crypto is the future of America, 3,000 likes on Twitter. And all of a sudden their staff goes, hey, the boss wants to work on crypto, doesn't know anything, but he just knows people really like it. And that's when when Elizabeth Warren launched her anti-crypto army. And I was like, it was kind of like, again, I used to do campaigns back in the day, but it was a major blunder politically. I thought that was just a misstep, just calling out an entire industry, regardless of political factions. If you looked at the comments, you looked at the ratios, like it got ratioed hard on X. And a lot of people are saying like, this is a really bad move to just call out all these people, regardless, their political ideologies. And I think we saw that play out very well in November, where a lot of folks in the grassroots side came out and there was a dismissal of the crypto voter. I mean, candidly too, like I thought like, hey, who's going to go to the polls for just crypto when there's so many other things on the table for this election? But I was proven wrong, like many others. And the grassroots is there, and props to stand with crypto and a lot of other groups for mobilizing that voter base because it came a force. And I think a lot of folks in DC, even if they were anti-crypto, they've been knowing that, hey, you don't mess with crypto. They got they're a nasty bunch and they can be very scrappy. And it's not just, campaign dollars. It's Twitter, it's social media. It's a lot of the lobbyists coming in and educating. There's a lot of vectors of the industry wants to educate folks and engage. But if you attack it, there is now.
And to your point, just having that kind of closed-minded blanket, it's all wrong, I think was a incredible blunder on some progressives' parts. And, taking the time to learn the industry and understand it. And then, like we do in a good democracy, right? Pressure test with hard questions and work on the legislation. But
of course, and DC is a very headline-driven city, and so crypto hacks, crypto used for illicit finance, Silk Road, and those things dominated the headlines, and especially in a national security heavy focused city, that tends to stick out. So again, I don't blame some of these older members of Congress having a view, but hey, like. You have to learn every day. And, this is a new space that's been really taken off. And if you're still ignoring it, you might ignore it to your own peril.
Yeah. I mean, this election was clearly a big win for crypto. But as we also know, the next election starts the day that the last election ended. So do you all see that same level of engagement continuing through? We've got the midterms coming up, right? Obviously, next 4 years. How do you keep that going?
Well, I don't run it personally. Obviously, we're just doing more on the lobbying side here, but we were definitely keeping that machine going. And actually, we had the Fair Shake folks double down. I think it's $60 million, at least right now, they have in the reserves for the next cycle. So it's a pretty sizable force there and only likely to grow over time. So, we'll see exactly how maybe some of the progressives, to your point, shift a little bit. Will we see an overt anti-crypto army push again this cycle? I doubt it. But, things can change. It's politics. And we'll see how heavy folks lean into being pro-crypto. We saw some candidates being really, really, really pro-crypto, Donald Trump being one of them. But then we saw others just kind of say one positive tweet and that's it. And we'll see if they vote, when the time comes for the things that they stood for. So, varying degrees here of interest. But I will say lastly, post-election, especially, I usually handle mostly Republicans. I've had a lot of folks outreach saying, we want to do something on crypto. We're really excited about it. We just know it's this kind of new area of legislation that no one's really written the rules for. So it's kind of like this wild west of legislation, which is rare. And the political lines aren't really fully divided yet. So let's work on it. And that's what drove me to the issue. Just like, hey, this is new. At least when I work on a bank issue, I know where, hey, this is where the Republicans historically are, this is where Democrats historically are. And that's been nowhere for crypto. It's a complete blank slate. So it's like, hey, let's not make this partisan. Like, why do we need to do that for like a quick political win? Let's get good legislation, good policy, make it bipartisan. It might take a little longer time, but it'll be here to last rather than just kind of, turned over whichever next administration.
If you can, I'm curious, what is that coalition looking like? Like we've, for lack of a better word, danced around a little bit, like the age issue, but are you seeing younger generations of members of Congress more open to this? Are you seeing it just over time across the board now?
I mean,
People are getting
overall
more
across the
educated?
board, I mean, it's more just like generally with the vibes, but like for individual folks, like Angela also, I mean, mind you, also young for Congress is a relative term here, so
Right.
bear with me.
Yes.
So like take like Adam Schiff or Angela Alsobrooks, two Democrats in the Senate. Angela Alsobrooks just got on the Senator Haggerty stablecoin bill, so she's already putting her marker down that she's pro crypto and trying to get regulation done. So we've already seen kind of younger Democrat senators move into this space. Richie Torres is kind of that icon in the House, has been pro crypto, but he's got plenty of other folks. Darren Soto being the younger guys in the OG days. And then I mentioned Republican side, we got Brandon Gill, who's been fantastic. Will Timmons has been good on NFTs. And that's a cool thing I mentioned about crypto is that there's so many facets here that sometimes for like market structure, we probably can't get to everything here. But things like NFTs do need regulation. And that's where it's good to have like individual members of Congress say, hey, I want to work on NFTs or I want to work on Bitcoin mining. And it's like, good, let me put you in touch with those experts and let's craft good policy to get something across the finish line here. And so that's what I've been mostly doing, at least on my end, is trying to divvy out like, hey, like let's find the right people to work on the right issues. And not like I can fully control it, but the idea is more just like, hey, we can't have everyone work on a stablecoin bill. As much as that's the hot topic this month, let's work on some other issues because likely those will become issues for the industry down the road.
Yeah. Can you give us an update on where that stands? I know that David Sachs, the new crypto czar, said that was one of the top priorities and it was optimistic about getting some type of legislation on crypto passed within the first 6 months of the administration. Do you think that's realistic? And where does that coalition stand?
So it's gonna be tough. I think we'll have some congressional action, but like probably it's out of one of the chambers before the 60 days are over. But to say it gets signed to the president's desk, I'd say optimistically before August, but more likely probably in the fall. It just really depends how these next 2 weeks shape out. But it looks like we're going to get a vote in the Senate Banking Committee on the stablecoin bill for Senator Haggerty fairly soon. Right now, there's 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and that's very new for the Senate. The Senate usually only had one pro-Democrat senator. That was Kristen Gillibrand, and now it is a lot wider of a group. So optimistic on stablecoins, and there's less political hurdles, I would say, than like market structure. It gets a lot more complicated in the weeds, whereas stablecoins has been largely baked for the most part. The only issue that happened last year 2 years ago, was the Fed objected. It passed the House; they were ready to go, and the Fed said, "No, we want full control over stablecoin regulation. We don't want the state to have any role." And the Republicans and some Democrats pushed back, saying, "Well, New York has a stablecoin regime; like they should be able to have it." Same with Nebraska or Wyoming. We're looking at Nebraska potentially too. So. All these states have been doing their own individual thing, but that's where the bill died last time, was just that one line of saying, who is the main regulator at the federal level, or should there be one? And now with that kind of gone away, with Brainerd gone, it seems to be a lot more, easier of a pathway. But the 2 bills that, you should watch are the Haggerty bill, as well as the French Hill Bryan style bill in the House. They are purposely different. So what's going to probably have to happen, they're going to have to combine them at some point once they pass the House and the Senate, and then they're going to vote on it again. So that's why I'm more looking towards maybe the fall timeframe, just because you have to have 3 separate votes. But progress is going to start probably March.
Easy. Yeah.
It's Congress. I had to explain that to the crypto Twitter. It's just because we vote out a committee, we have a lot more steps and votes to happen to get something to the president's desk.
Yeah. Connect this back to the broader, I guess, economy. So the policy landscape obviously is looking, I'll say, positive for the crypto industry, but you're also seeing in traditional finance either more adoption or certainly less skepticism. I think you're seeing this both on a consumer level, but also some of our big traditional financial services as well. Maybe a chicken and egg situation where both are helping each other, but how much do you guys see that continued adoption, and how's that beneficial to your efforts here?
Well, I didn't have the title institutional relations at the beginning of this year. I'll put it that way.
Got it.
But
That's
after
good.
so many folks reach out, especially post-November, it's especially on the institutional side, but taking a step back here, the institutions have been engaged, especially on the lobbying side. Even dating when I was a Hill staffer in 2017, BNY Mellon was trying to custody crypto, and they were having regulatory issues to do such. Same with State Street. And so we've seen the institutions on the precipice and been wanting to get involved. We've seen plenty, to your point, though, have been purposely on the sidelines or poo-pooing the entire industry. And that has shifted drastically to the point that post-November, I've been getting calls from major GSIBs, and not like they're lobbyists, but like they're research teams, or like their policy teams, less to an extent, some of their exec teams in some cases. But the amount of outreach, especially from the institutions and the banks in particular, has been astounding. And it's almost 2 a week at this point to have calls with. They would just randomly reach out to me.
Yeah.
So the interest is there, but at least in my experience talking to these folks, some of them have progressed a lot farther behind the scenes and building a product and services, just waiting for the regulatory clarity to happen. And the two main things that were holding them back were SAB 121, which is a rule by the SEC basically that prevent custody from any bank whatsoever of crypto. And then there was the Fed policy statement of January 3rd, 2023, which basically told all the banks use extreme risk mitigation when it comes to crypto, aka touch crypto, be careful, and we could be going after you after that. So those two have now gone in these past 2 months, and that is huge. So we'll see what that means for the business sides. I'm sure we'll be seeing some more announcements from some major players, but again, the last thing I'll say is some folks have put a lot of work in, and they're going to have a pretty detailed product. From my conversations, they didn't say everything, but it's a decent amount of institutions, and they're going to have a huge leg up versus the ones that have been on the sideline who are just catching up now. So you'll see that pretty soon, I think, in the coming months.
Is there a broader economic argument that you're able to make now to when you go talk to lawmakers on the Hill? I mean, just thinking back to the early days of crypto, one of the arguments was, crypto is only good for itself, right? It's like purely an investment vehicle. And now we're starting to see real world examples of at least blockchain and some of the technology that underpins the industry being used in a variety of sectors. How are you able to talk about, I guess, more of the real world impact with lawmakers now in a way that maybe you weren't able to before?
I think you mentioned the grassroots from earlier on, and that's been the cool part of crypto. It's so diverse in terms of the camps and folks who are in it. I mean, like, for example, like NFTs have brought a whole different cast of characters and that I've never met before. I'm usually dealing with finance bros or tech bros before 2021. Sure. And all of a sudden we have like artists. We have Blau, for example, who does a lot of good DJ stuff that I raged to in college, apparently. And then we have a lot of like these actually like people and stuff who are making NFTs art itself. And there's a whole cast of folks on Capitol Hill, more on the Democrat side, who are very sympathetic to artists and saying, hey, like I can make money now on my own here through NFTs. And actually, we've seen that play out where some Democrats came a lot more pro crypto because of the NFT angle. For Republicans, it was largely around revitalization of rural areas, especially around Bitcoin mining. So Rockdale, Texas, city that lost a major manufacturing plant, thousands of jobs. The city was pretty much on its last limb. And then all of a sudden the Bitcoin miners moved in. And they're paying, $100,000 plus to a lot of these folks who in rural communities weren't making, half that at the manufacturing plants. Again, the jobs may not be as much as they were before, but there was nothing there early on. And a lot of Republicans really, grasped into the economic benefits, especially again for rural communities that a lot of Bitcoin miners have. So, and that's just two examples. There's a whole, cast of characters that, the good thing at a trade is I can pull and pick from all these companies or folks just even on Twitter who I've interacted with and say, hey, like we need to bring you to Capitol Hill. There are a couple of members of Congress who would really resonate with your story. And I think that's what's going to be best. Instead of just having one solid message that, may resonate with some folks and may not for others, meet people where they are and bring folks that they would listen to. And again, it takes a lot of time to meet the right people. And in crypto, there's a cast of characters you probably don't want around politicians, but when you find the right group, good to go.
One more question for me. I just wanted to take a moment and kind of zoom out. So obviously a lot of the industry's messaging over the last few years has been, let's keep this great innovation here in America. Let's help it grow. How are you all as things move forward? Ideally this year, we get more regulatory clarity. How are you all engaging kind of with the rest of the world on either rules of the road or making sure kind of American companies are competitive?
Well, unfortunately, we've been behind on a lot of these rules of the road here. So a lot of my conversations in the past have been, hey, dear state association or dear state lawmaker or dear, group operating in Singapore or the EU, pick a country almost, like they're all ahead of us at this point. So a lot of those conversations in years past have just been, what have you done to get to that point? What worked? What didn't work? Now, we have the opportunity to take maybe, to catch up here. I wouldn't say the lead necessarily. We're still pretty far behind, but there's gonna be a lot of tough conversations around things like DeFi, for example, that haven't
Sure.
really happened yet. The EU pretty much exempted a lot of the DeFi situation because a lot of people are still scratching their heads of how do you regulate this. But in Congress, it looks like they're going to try to tackle that, maybe not in the market structure bill, but that seems to be kind of the next priority, is to tackle this tough thing where maybe we can take the lead in setting standards here that we have lost that before. So we'll see if that pans out. But there's plenty of issues in the crypto space that are going to be keeping us busy for quite some time, let alone meme coins. Like, where does that fit in the conversation if they're not securities?
Sure, yes,
like that throws a wrench into a lot of things. So if there's one thing I can know about the industry is that they'll innovate to keep me busy. So
That's good.
Well, last question for you, Ron. What does success look like for you? Maybe let's just pick 2 years from now. You've enjoyed the momentum of the past election. You've enjoyed, growing support both within Washington and across the country. 2 years from now, what do you want to say that you guys got accomplished?
I want to get a stablecoin bill done by the end of the year. And then, market structure is really important to me, but I want to make sure that everything is done on a bipartisan basis and strong bipartisan. I think we got that in the last House vote with the 79 Democrats voting for it, Fit 21. But I'll never forget this quick story is that it was the last day of 2017 in Congress. We're about to drop the Token Taxonomy Act. And my Warren Davidson goes on NPR and talks about his other bill, talking about building a wall and individual donations being utilized to build a wall. And the NPR host said, well, how would you fund it? And offhand, because we were talking about crypto a lot before that interview, he goes, I don't know, we can probably fund it with crypto or something. And then all of a sudden, all these headlines come in saying,
there goes the bipartisanship.
There goes the bipartisan. And that's actually happened. The Democrat calls us up and says, hey, heard you guys want to fund crypto to pay for the wall. I thought we were regulating just more markets and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, we are. Like, this is not related at all. And the Democrat walked. It took basically a 2-hour conversation on the House floor on the last day. And I'm sitting here in the House chambers like, please, 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 even though this bill's not moving this year, like, this is important to be bipartisan. We can't lose it on political silliness. And it went through. And I'll never forget fist bumping in the air when Warren Davidson gave me the thumbs up that the Democrats back on board. But for me personally, it was just like, hey, look, we've worked a lot time to get here. This space has a lot of silliness sometimes that can really peel folks off for support. But this is the future. It's obviously here to stay. Let's get this rules done. And let's make sure it's bipartisan, because I don't want to be doing this again when the new administration comes in and says, let's undo everything that the previous administration did. And we just go back ping pong back and forth. That's not healthy. That's not sustainable. It's only healthy for lobbyists, but I'd rather be working on more substantive stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Ron, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you have a busy day ahead of you. You're headed back over to the Hill after this conversation is over. So we really appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
And to our listeners, remember that you can like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. And you can also follow us on Twitter/X at PentaGRP and on LinkedIn at Penta Group. I'm your co-host, Ylan. And as always, thanks for listening to What's at Stake.